Okay, I'm hoping this works and everyone can see and hear what I'm doing. I don't know if you can see me. I don't think that's important though. So for those of you that missed the first lecture, we're going to go through up to what we talked about then. And again, hope this works. If this doesn't work, then you won't be hearing any of this anyway. So I guess that doesn't matter. Alrighty. So this is the urinary system. There's a silly meme, and we'll just move on from there. Couple points to make. Of course, obviously, what's simple about this unit is what it's made up of. Just generally speaking, it's only made up of 5 or 6 parts: 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, a bladder, and a urethra. So it's basically 2 kidneys, 3 tubes, and a baggie. So in it on a diagram, it's quite simple. In reality, it's not. In fact, there's a whole field of study called nephrology that deals with all this stuff here. Male and female urinary systems and the male reproductive system. This is the first time, as you probably noticed, that we're actually going to have to differentiate, make a distinction between males and females, obviously for the urethra. The urethra in a male is urinary and reproductive. The urethra in a female is solely urinary, and we'll talk more about that we'll talk about that for the rest of the year, really. And then, of course, urology here is related to the male and female urinary systems and the male reproductive systems. But nephrology is really all about the kidneys for the most part, because the word nephrology comes from the main unit of the kidney, which is called the nephron. And although some would argue that well, no one would argue, but you would imagine that somebody that doesn't really know everything would say that the purpose of the kidney is to make urine. That is not the purpose of the urinary system. The purpose of the urinary system is right here, homeostasis. That's the purpose. Somebody the other day said they liked my pen, so here we go. Homeostasis. That's it right there. It's all about this balance, and it's about the composition. What's in your blood? How much of it is in your blood? And the pressure of your blood. That's really critical. In fact, the heart actually kind of listens to what the kidneys tell it to do, which is weird. We typically think of the heart and the brain as like number one and two. Well, not in this case. The kidneys actually kind of boss the heart around a little bit. So there's your fig leaves for those of you that are a little bit prideful or bashful. There's your 2 kidneys, the right and the left. The right here is actually a little bit lower. You can see that there. It's a little bit lower than the left. That's because there's a organ there. And the other day I asked which one it was. I'll give you a minute to think about it. Kind of looks like this. Yep, it's the liver. So this one's a little bit lower because liver. And on top of the kidneys are the adrenal glands. And that's where, of course, adrenaline and which is epinephrine and erythropoietin, red blood cell production comes out of there. So one thing to point out, when the kidneys don't work properly, these glands don't work properly. So again, it's really a systemic thing. So the urine is formed back here, and then it comes on down these ureters here, and then to the bladder, then of course out the urethra. All right, so here we go. The kidneys, their job is to remove water and H3, which is ammonia. Urea, that's a waste product. Bilirubin, it's a pigment that gives urine its pigment. Red blood cells their color. Uric acid, anyone out there know what the buildup of uric acid crystals is called? Typically affects your big toe. It's called gout. I probably can't spell it. There we go, gout. And that's a buildup of that. You got to be careful with you don't want to eat things like spinach and things like that. That's going to build those things up. Some toxins, ions, and all that stuff. But it also excretes heat and CO2. And then there's other things. This category up here, other things. You have these things called body buffers. That's a little bit kind of like a chemistry thing. Don't worry about it. By the way, all the stuff in yellow should not be in your guided notes. So I should have said that at the very beginning. When it's yellow, it's basically just listen if you want, or just skip past it if you want. You're free to do whatever you want with that. One of the, of course, blood, of course, can actually participate as an excretory organ by picking up and delivering stuff, excreting heat and water. Your lungs excrete carbon dioxide. They excrete heat and a little bit of water through vapor every time you breathe. Sorry about this typo. That annoys me. Pseudorephus glands. Anyone remember what those are called? The real name for those, or the common name for those? Way back when, sweat glands. Those are your sweat glands. Remember, you got 2 of them actually. These are the eccrine. The heat, the water secretes heat, water, carbon dioxide, salts, and urea. Remember, we talked about this then. You don't pee through your skin. That's silly. But some of the things that are found in urine are also found in sweat. Your GI tract, of course, excretes tons of things, waste products, bacteria, fiber, things like that, non-digestibles. And of course, your liver. It's huge when it comes to doing all these things. Changes, as far as recycling and getting rid of bad stuff and excreting things that don't need to be there and all that stuff. So again, we talked about that with the last unit. At least we tried to. We were already separated from each other when we did the liver. So, okay, as we always start with the general functions of the kidney. I have a fancy word, summary functions. It's the same thing. We always start with the general functions of the unit. So let's do that. This is the function of the kidney. It's okay, it's kind of the same. Well, it's not the same. It's really the kidneys is the main job. The job of the ureter and the bladder and the urethra is really to hold and get rid of the urine. But anyway, the kidney's job is to regulate blood volume, the composition. That's right, regulate blood volume. So it's not weird that you drink a lot of water and you got to pee a lot. Well, that's because you are increasing your blood volume. That increases your blood pressure, and your heart doesn't like that. So it's going to tell the kidneys, hey, you can start doing something about this. Um, your brain will start doing that. And your kidneys just kind of do it themselves, but sometimes they get bossed around too. So the job of the kidney is, of course, to remove wastes, urea, uric acid, ammonia, things like that, and also as it does this, the composition and the volume of the blood is going to change. And then what you have left over is urine. The interstitial fluid is the fluid between your cells. So when you're dehydrated and you don't feel very well, that's because you're losing a lot of this fluid that's basically keeping your cells alive. Regulate your pH, the pH of your blood. Again, this is not just kidneys, but your lungs do this, your brain does this. There's lots of things that go into um, making sure that the pH of your blood is where it's supposed to be. Excuse me, I just yawned. Pardon me. Regulate your blood pressure. Kidneys regulate your blood pressure. That seems a little bit bizarre that they would have anything to do with your blood pressure, but there's this thing called renin, and renin is something that we'll talk about a little bit later, right here. Um, you don't need to know anything about it right now. You're not going to know much about it later, but it is a critical pathway, and again, we will talk about that later. And then, of course, contributes to metabolism. Don't forget, metabolism is not really about eating and losing weight and not being skinny or whatever. It's the way your body works. It's how your body works. It's what your body works. And so it contributes, but it helps synthesize this hormone, which is the active form of vitamin D. And of course, vitamin D helps your body absorb calcium. Secretes EPO, that's erythropoietin. That increases the production of red blood cells. Again, so if your kidneys go away, so does the production of red blood cells. Well, without red blood cells, then you're anemic and you've got all sorts of other problems. And then this finally, this cool word here, the gluconeogenesis takes old glucose molecules, basically lactic acid, and can actually reconvert it back into usable forms of energy, glucose, and things like that. So it's called gluconeogenesis. The liver actually does this too. All right. So the organs, I already told you on the surface level, it's actually quite simple what the organs are. You get two kidneys. They are paired. They are reddish. I don't know if they named the kidney beans after the kidneys or the kidneys after the kidney beans. Who will ever know? They are right above the waist, about levels of T12 to L3. That's your thoracic vertebra and your lumbar vertebra. So it occupies about 4 vertebrae and partially protected by these ribs, which you may recall are also known as the floating ribs. It's actually not in the peritoneum, it's behind the peritoneum. That's the organ that kind of wraps all your digestive organs up. We may or may not have talked about that in class before the break. I think some classes did, some classes didn't. Probably fifth period never got to it. But anyway, so it's behind. They're actually stuck to the back wall of your abdomen. So behind your abdomen, like basically your inside of your back. That's where those are. The right is slightly lower than the left because of the liver. We already talked about that. And I guess as you get older, perhaps, and your connective tissue starts getting droopy, they can actually start floating or dropping. And that's a problem because it'll actually kink the ureter. And when that kink happens, the urine can actually start backing up into the kidney. And that's disastrous. Your urine, as you know, is acidic, and we don't want that acidic stuff in your kidney. Very delicate. There are 3 layers of tissue that surround the kidney. There's 3 layers that surround it, and there's basically 2 regions that make it up. 3 around it, 2 in it. All right, let's get into the regions. All right, so here they are again. There's your adrenal glands up there. I don't think we have any of the things we're about to talk about here, but of course you may recognize this. There's your vena cava, and this, of course, is your descending or abdominal aorta, and you've got the renal artery and vein there, of course. Then the ureters come on down here, and then, of course, the bladder down here. The side view, this is if they kind of cut you in half there. There's your kidney there. There's your blood vessels there. And again, you can see from the back side, the left is higher than the right. And then, of course, the ureters. We'll come back over here to the left side, and you can see this thing called the adipose capsule, the renal fascia, and the capsule, the renal capsule. These are the three layers that we're going to talk about right now that surround the kidney. They're actually part of the kidney. They actually surround the kidney. Okay. All right. So the three layers that surround the kidney, you've got the capsule, which I have the word deep. Actually, hold on. That's actually That's right. It's the deepest. That's right. It's the deepest of the three, although they are all surrounding the kidney. Smooth, transparent, fibrous, continuous, blah, blah, blah. It is a protection and it maintains shape. Again, we've seen this over and over again when these deep layers have the same kind of structure. And of course, they typically have the same kind of function. So protection and maintains shape. The next one's called the adipose capsule, which of course adipose is the in-between layer and it's a fat layer. Fat typically has two purposes. It's for protection and energy. And once again, you can see it here. It is protection and holds your kidneys in place. In cases of starvation or you're kind of going on a low fat diet, then your body will actually start breaking down that fat wherever it can get it, and maybe even the fat around your kidney, which of course it's for protection. So whenever you do stuff like that, you're increasing your chances of harm. So be careful when you do these crash diets. The fascia, we've seen the word fascia before. It's usually a connective tissue. It is superficial, the outermost layer, dense, irregular connective tissue. We've seen that so many times. It's tough, it's inelastic, it doesn't tear, it doesn't stretch. And again, you can see it here. It's going to anchor the kidneys so they don't move around and jiggle and jostle when you jump or run or hurdle or pole vault or do all sorts of things. And oh, look at that. That's awesome. There, just put a big old smiley face right there. Yeah, that was good. It's evil looking. All right, let's go. Okay, so those are the three layers. There's the renal capsule. The others aren't diagrammed here. But then, so you got these three layers on the outside, the adipose, and then the fascia. And then you have these two regions. You have this cortex and the medulla. Those are the two regions. And then we're going to talk about this hilus thing too in a minute. So stand by with that. All right, so we'll come back to that. As you've seen in the diagrams, the pinched in portion faces toward the middle. So that's whoa, what a bad drawing that was. Let's get rid of that because that's somewhat embarrassing, actually. All right, that looks terrible. Let's not do that again. Let's see, different color. I'll do different color. So let's see, we got this, there we go. It kind of pinches in. So here's your vertebral column, and then you got one. I can't do this on the other side. There you go. There you go. Okay. And then the ureters will come on out here, and then they'll go down to the bladder down here. Okay. And then the urethra. All right. So the concave border there faces the vertebral column. Let me erase all that because that is completely in the way. Near the center of the concave border is the hilus. This is where ureter leaves the kidney, and then the Holy Trinity, nerves, blood, and lymph vessels enter and exit the kidney. So let me back up quickly so you can see this again. Here is the hilus here, which I did in red, yellow. Over here, you can see it here, and it's an intersection or a junction. The word hilus is not specific to the urinary system. There's a hilus, for example, females, you have one around your ovary. Again, it just basically means you got a bunch of stuff going in and a bunch of stuff going out. That's a hilus, and the kidneys are called the renal hilus because, well, it's the kidney. And so it's where the ureter leaves, where nerves, blood, and lymph vessels enter and exit. We've seen this trio several times this year. So what you're looking at here is a CT scan. This is your back up here, and this would be your belly button down here. And so there's your kidneys. You can see here on the white, the bright white would be the ureters filled with urine. This is your vertebra here, and this is the spines of your vertebral column there. I'm not a CT specialist, so I can't tell you what that's best. Probably your intestines there. Liver, maybe? I think it's got to be your liver. All right. Okay, so that's the general stuff. So we have the three layers that surround the kidneys, three that surround. We've got two regions, the medulla and the cortex. Those terms shouldn't be unfamiliar. We have them in the brain, for example, the medulla oblongata and the cerebral cortex. So these are words that aren't, again, they're not specific. to the urinary system. They're used in science a lot. Well, maybe not science, but certainly anatomy. The medulla, deep reddish portions, the deep part, um, contains the pyramids, which if you look down here, look like little grapefruit corners or little grapefruit things. If you ever cut open a grapefruit, and blah 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 blah. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Okay. The other part, the part that's actually toward the outside, the cortex. Remember, cortex means bark or rind. The superficial part extends from the capsule to the base of the pyramids and the spaces in between. All right, so here's the renal capsule. Okay, from the capsule, from here down through here in the in between, that's called the column. These are called the columns. And then, so all this light pink stuff, basically, okay, that is all the cortex. Okay, and I did a pretty good job of tracing that. All right. So, although let me change my color again because you can't see it. Let's see, changing color. Trying to won't let me do it. All right. So this is just showing the blood supply, obviously, but again, this would be the cortex out here, and this would be, and the medulla is basically all the pyramids here. Okay, the pyramids are part of the medulla. All right, so the cortex and the pyramids, so the cortex, which is the outer region, and the pyramids make up this thing called the parenchyma. Again, parenchyma is not a word that's specific to the kidneys. Again, it's just a science word, and here it's the functional portion. It's where the magic happens, essentially. So basically, all this down here, if you're following me down here in this diagram, the cortex, all this stuff, and even the pyramids, so part of the medulla, that's all the functional part. Why is it? Because this is where this is, the nephrons. If you hear nothing else today, which I hope you've heard a lot today, but if you hear nothing else today, the nephrons, the functional unit of the kidney, they are the brain of the kidney. They're not that stupid. There's 1 million per kidney, so approximately 2 million nephrons. What's interesting is you basically are born with every single one you're ever going to have, and as you grow and the kidney grows, they grow, or they grow as the kidney grows. However, if you break one, if you destroy one, they won't come back. So kidney diseases, that's why one of the things that makes kidney disease so terrible. There's no healing taking place. It's not like the liver. Okay. Now, that being said, right here, usually healthy ones will hypertrophy, get bigger to make up for the ones. So maybe you donated a kidney, gave it to this guy here, and you only have one kidney. Well, your kidney will actually grow a few sizes bigger, just kind of like the Grinch's heart on Christmas. So that's possible if everything's healthy. But again, we don't. Yeah, if you're donating someone something, then good for you. But sure, again, healthy lifestyle, good diet, good lifestyle. That'll keep away the kidney disease. Don't worry about this guy. This guy's named Don Henley. He's one of my, the Eagles. That's the drummer. All right. Anyway, so each nephron, the functional unit consists of a corpuscle and the PCT, loop, and DCT. These are all tubes, and we'll talk a lot about those things later. This is one of those slides that I want you to appreciate the complexity of what's going on. You don't need to know any of this, okay? You don't need to know any of it. But again, I want you to understand that this gets pretty complicated, and what we're doing here is basically just scratching the surface. But yeah, I don't, too much nephron? I don't know what that means. Anyway, I don't know what this drawing is either. Hold on, that's really just annoying. Okay, anyway, so this is very complicated. You don't have to know any of this, okay? All right. However, speaking of things you do have to know. All right, so we're going to spend the first bit of time talking about this part right here. This is called the corpuscle. All right, and the corpuscle is made up of the glomerulus and the capsule. All right, so structurally, that's all we're going to focus on for the next day or two. Then the urine or whatever will flow through these other things. You've got this thing called the PCT, the loop of Henle down here, if you're following me down here, and then the DCT. One other thing I want to point out here is that there's basically, let's see, there's basically three things that go on in the kidney. One is this green arrow down here, filtration, and then you've got this blue and yellow, which is absorption. But then if you look down here, you actually have this yellow arrow going into, and so that's called secretion. So you've actually got three different functions that are going to take place. Again, we're just going to spend the next day or two just talking just here, just this circle and this green arrow here, which that probably doesn't make you feel any better, but just hang in there. We'll get to it. All right, before we get into it, the blood supply. Kidneys take up 1% of your body mass and receive 20 to 25%. What's interesting about that, and you don't have to know that. What's interesting about that is your brain takes 20 to 25% of your resting output too. Between your kidneys and your brain, 40 to 50% of your blood is going there every single minute. That means that half of your blood is going to the rest of your body. It has to be split up amongst the rest of your body. That is an amazing number right there. Just think about that for a minute. Um, the kidneys receive about 1,200 milliliters of blood. I don't have my water bottle of science with me, but it's just your classic little water bottle. So that would be about one and a half of those, or no, pardon me, about three of those water bottles per minute. Okay, per minute, that much blood going through each kidney. Each nephron has one afferent arteriole. You may remember that from the nervous system, which divides into a ball, blah, blah, blah. What I really want you to know is this term here, glomerulus. That's right. It's pronounced glomerulus. And this, again, no, it's fine if you want to know this, but this is a key component here, the glomerulus. And this is still in the nephron. I know it's confusing. All right. So the nephron. I already mentioned this a second ago, but here's the actual outline. Your nephron performs three functions as the fluid passes. Okay, filtration, and just think of filtration like, well, I've got these stupid coffee filters here. Um, Basically, as just the same way. If something is small, it'll pass through. If something is big, it won't. Now, complicated than that, but for now, just think of filtration as something that just kind of big stays in, small gets out. Reabsorption. If you're absorbing or reabsorbing stuff, you're going to bring it back. And so you actually have this process where materials that you might have lost are back up into the blood. If that didn't happen, you wouldn't be living very long. Last one, at the end of it all, you actually secrete some stuff back in, which is bizarre. Well, so if you're like, well, wait a minute, I filtered it out, I took it back in, and then I put it back out again. Sometimes, but it's mainly for waste and things like that, and things that you don't need. Again, we'll talk about it later. So this is obviously an oversimplified version of it, but you can kind of see what's going on. Here's your glomerulus. This is where your renal arteries and stuff come in. So your blood's coming through here, and you have stuff that actually filters out. You've got red stuff, green, you've got Skittles that come on out. I don't remember what these are. Sodium, glucose, and amino acids. So as you have this stuff that's actually going to be would be peed out, okay, would be peed out, but your body reclaims it. Okay, it's going to take some of the stuff back up because it needs glucose and it needs your amino acids for proteins and it needs all this stuff. So again, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but this is the reabsorption part. But again, we'll get to it later. All right. So here, let's focus again just on this part right here. It's a little bit more of a simplified version of that previous slide. But again, we're just going to look right here at the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. So blood's going to come in through here, and big stuff's going to stay, small stuff's going to be filtered out, and then the blood's going to cycle back in and stay in your body. Okay. This part, this is where stuff that you don't need or is too small is going to come on out. If it doesn't get reabsorbed with these arrows here, it'll be all the way down here. It'll end up being eliminated. Okay, so the two parts of the nephron, you have the tubule, that's the PCT and all that stuff that we'll talk about later. But right now, we're just going to talk about this first part, the thing I keep circling on those diagrams, the corpuscle. It is in the cortex, which remember is the outer part, and its job, it filters the plasma. That's its job. Two parts to it, the glomerulus, that tangled ball of capillaries that I keep pointing to, and this thing called the Bowman's capsule. It's a double membrane thing. We've seen that before because it's double. Here they are, your parietal and visceral layers with the space in between. Okay, that's classic. So the analogy is if you take your fist and punch it into a balloon, if you did that, you would actually see that the balloon kind of forms a double layer, and your fist would be the glomerulus, and so you get this space in between, this double layer in the space. So anyway, I'll show you a diagram of that just now. So here it is. Here is the glomerulus in a And then, so you got this double layered capsule. Where does it say it? Yeah, here. This double layered capsule. This big weird looking octopus thing is the glomerulus. And you got the space in between. So in comes your blood, and small stuff comes out through here, and then it'll keep flowing down. You'll reclaim a lot of that. But stuff that's too big, like blood cells and proteins, they're going to stay and go right back up into your body. So something like this, okay, where you've got, here's your red blood cell that's going through it. It can't get out. Can't. It's too big. So it's just going to keep going around and back into your body. Meanwhile, water and salts and all sorts of things are going to be filtered out and get to the capsular space here and be pushed on further. Again, this is another one of those. I want you to appreciate the complexity. I've talked about this several times, how it is interesting that even something as simple as a capillary has these very specialities, I guess you could say. But these got these fenestrations, um, got these little pores and slits that actually you can see here prevent filtration of blood cells and all that. But anyway, the point is, again, it gets very, very complicated. You get these things down here, podocytes and pedicels, which basically mean like feet and toes and things like that. It's kind of silly. But anyway, we'll just push on. I don't know why I have all these slides that we don't even look at. I don't know why. I just can't ever seem to make them go away. Okay. Um, I don't. I think we're close to where we finished the other day with the other class, but I'll push on just a little bit longer. So you got the renal tubule and ducts, the renal corpuscle, which of course is the part that we keep talking about, the glomerulus and the capsule, and they all lie in the cortex of the kidney for the most part. After the capsule, it flows through into the following order. It goes into the tubes: the proximal convoluted, the PCT, the loop of Henle, and the DCT. And then you've got some other ducts at the end of that. That's supposed to be a duck. Here, see, get it, ducks, get it. Okay. Anyway, so we'll talk more about that later. So here it is again. You've got the glomerulus here, and then it's going to be pushed on into the PCT, this giant loop, looks like a paper clip, the DCT, and then the collecting ducts. Same kind of thing here. Okay. Now, what we're going to get to in a minute is the fact that there's actually two types of nephrons. One that's kind of got the short loop, and one that's got a little bit longer loop, and that's what we're going to talk about next, I believe. Yeah. All right. So you got two types of nephrons. One's called cortical. One's called juxtamedullary. They're the same except for these loops of Henle. Notice how long this one is. Notice how short this one is. So this is the cortical one. It's called cortical because basically most of it's in the cortex. This one's called juxtamedullary because it goes up it's closer to the medulla or medulla. That's yeah, kind of a ridiculous word, but that's what that means. So you have two types of nephrons based on the structure of the loop of Henle, which connects the two CTs. The first portion is the descending limb, which dips into the medulla. There's a thick and thin. Don't worry about that. Okay. The cortical nephrons. These is most of the nephrons in your kidneys. Most of the nephrons you have are cortical, short loops, and the glomeruli are in the cortex. That's the tangled ball of capillaries. Okay. Really straightforward. The cortical ones, most of them, short loops, glomeruli in the cortex, right here. Okay. So here's the cortex, the outer part, and here's the corpuscle. They dip a little bit into the medulla, but not very much. Here's the difference. Look at this. The juxtamedullary one's right next to the medulla. Long loops of Henle. Okay, that's the main difference. So, of course, with that difference, of course, you can see the percentage. Obvious, that's obvious. They're deep in the cortex, close to the medulla. Um, they have long loops. They are able to make very dilute or very concentrated urine. In other words, if you're dehydrated, they can kind of hold on to it a little bit and end up concentrating it, let your body reabsorb some of that water. If you've drunk too much water, then it's going to give you the opportunity to lose more of that water here. Okay, the longer it's there, so they can actually put water back in there or actually take water out, depending on, not that way, take water out if you have too much water in your body. Okay, and that's basically what these blue, you can see, well, this light blue here, there's the water reabsorption here. Okay, that's what that's talking about. Yes, reabsorption can take place other places as well, but we'll talk about that later. But the loop of Henle is actually capable of doing it a little bit better. Okay, all right, let's see. Anything we need to know here? I don't think so. Okay, that's Okay, well, that is a terrific place to stop. I think we actually went past where we ended up the other day, which we did it in record. We did like half the time, of course. But anyway, we'll pick up with this the next time we see each other. Okay, bye bye.